Turkistan Association of Canada. She graduated with a bachelor's degree in chemistry and Mandarin from Kashgar Teachers University of East Turkestan. And moreover, she graduated the nursing program at Vancouver Community College and is currently working as a nurse. Welcome, Tulisa. I think Tanisa is also muted. If you want to unmute yourself quickly. Yay, thank you. Same here.
Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us today's our chai. And today's topic is gonna be really heavy, and I hope everyone after this section and try to get deep breathing and try to compensate whatever you going to hear and whatever you're going to feel. And I just want to say, always talking about never again, but it's happening right now. It's 2019, so I think it's October. One of our camp survivor, and her name is Sairagul, and her testimony actually was published in Wall Street. The article, when she gave a testimony, and the article published exactly what she said about what's happening, what was happening while she was in the concentration camp. The one thing is really took my attention in the article. And that's why whenever I give a speech, I always talk about it. And a year ago, after, almost 1.5 years after, is the one of our brave camp survivor. And 2 weeks ago, she gave a testimony, and when BBC the interview with her, and about what she is talking about is the gang raped to Uyghur girls and women in concentration camps. Actually, even before BBC interview, this is published horrific evidence in Wall Street. And the Sairagul, and she, in this testimony, I'm going to say exactly what she was in her testimony in 2019 in October. And I will send this link to Julie, maybe, and all of you, you can get that link and you can read after. And Sairagul, she said, is the one day in the concentration camp, police asked every single person in the cell and gathered in the little backyard of the concentration camp. Almost from 200 to 300 people gathered. All of them is detainees and Uyghur people, including women and men, and in the backyard. And one of the Chinese official asked one Uyghur lady to stood up and confess her sin. And the lady, she stood up and then told everyone she was a bad person before she learned Chinese language in the concentration camps. Only she learned some of the Chinese language, then she understand and how great CCP is, and she's grateful whatever she had at that moment. And after she finished her speaking, and Chinese official asked her to came to the in front of all of the people. When she just stood up and came to the front, and almost 20 Chinese officials gang raped. Sorry. Front of these people. And whoever cry and whoever torn their face off, Chinese police took them and the other detainees never see them again. And you can imagine this horror, because I see most of the beautiful face, we are all women here. After I read this article, I changed my life, and then something always pump in my vein, and I try to do as much as I can. Imagine is as a Uyghur woman or man, just being a Uyghur, they have to accept whatever Chinese Communist Party, Chinese official to do Uyghurs. And this is very heavy thing. And I can't imagine, because after I read that article and I talked to Sairagul, and she said, is after that incident happened and she almost lost her mind. And a lot of people, and then they couldn't get up next day in their cell in front of more than 200, close to 300 people, and gang raped one of the girl. And right now, it's 2 weeks ago, the BBC, and they interviewed Anna Weaver, and she said the very horrific situation about your women in the concentration camp. Also, even not in the concentration camp, outside in their home right now, is they have to sleep with the Chinese official, and they have to eat with them, and always surveillance to your people 24 hours, 7 days. And you can imagine the situation of the Uyghurs right now. Chinese Communist Party used with high technology and the facial recognition, voice recognition, and they collect all biometric data. And we suspect it's because of they collecting this data just because of involuntary organ harvesting. And I don't want to take too much time right now, and we have another speakers. And after, when we have a question and answer, and I will try to my best to answer all of your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing that, Tanisa. It's so heartbreaking to hear about what's happening there, and I think most of us have not heard these stories before. We don't really recognize what's going on the ground, and thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing with us in this space. And I want to invite everyone to thank Tanisa in the chat, encourage her, and respond to what she shared. And now I'd like to introduce our next storyteller or speaker, AKIDA PULAT. AKIDA is a Uyghur activist in the US whose mother, named Rahla Dawat, has been detained by the Chinese government since December 12th, 2017. And her mother was one of the first Uyghur women to receive her PhD in Beijing Normal University. And she's also been a visiting scholar at the University of Pennsylvania, Indiana University, and the University of California at Berkeley. AKIDA has become an activist so that she can seek freedom for her mother and other Uyghurs who, like her mother, are being detained. Thank you so much, AKIDA. Welcome.
Thank you so much, all of you here to hear the horrible stories about what is happening to Uyghur. Last time during the chai events, I talked about how meaningful the chai in our culture. My chai is an opportunity for Uyghur people to bond with their relative, with their friends, with their colleague. My mom hosts the chai event all the time because she thinks nothing can compare to the family bond, to the emotional bond that the family members have for each others. Also, the chai events is the very basic opportunity for Uyghur women to take a break. Uyghur women are all very hardworking. They dedicated all of their life to their family, to take care of their children. At the same time, sometimes they still they even have to balance between a full-time job and all the household. My mother, she had a very busy working schedules. She earned her PhD. She spent day and night in her office, but she never forget to prepare nutritious breakfast, lunch, or dinners for me and my father. She would be there every time when my grandparents or when her mother-in-law or father-in-laws had some health issues. She would take them to the hospitals and take care of them all day. The chai event is a very basic. It's a very basic break for all of the Uyghur women to take a break from their life, to just enjoy some good time with their friends and family, to have some good food and have some love, so that they can stay away from the stressful life. But now, millions of Uyghur women are deprived from their right to have this basic entertainment that the people all around the world can have. Imagine you are having a life like that for several years. You are kept in a small rooms. You have to get up at 5 o'clock and you have to praise. You cannot do anything you want. You cannot take care of your family, or you cannot develop your careers, or you cannot take a rest. You have to spend all day singing the Communist Party songs, learning Mandarins, or praise the Xi Jinping. And once in a while, you will get punished, you will get beat, you will even get raped for nothing wrong you have done. And for several years, there is no good food for you. There is no the hug from your loved one, no freedoms. You cannot see anyone you love. You cannot even chat with your friends. This is the life that millions of women, including my mom, are going through. My mom is a professor at Xinjiang University. She spent all of her life earning her degrees, developing her careers, being an expert in her field, preserving the Uyghur cultures, and at the same time being a good mother, being a good daughter, being a good wife. The woman like her deserves a very wonderful retirement life, but instead she was taken by the Chinese government in 2017 December 12, and I haven't talked to her for more than 3 years. I know my mother are a strong woman, but I don't believe anyone is strong enough to endure that hardship, endured what the treatment in the concentration camp. That's why right now all I can think about is how to save my mother and others women that are suffering in these concentration camps. Right now I cannot enjoy my life. I cannot do anything else. I don't want to travel, or I don't want to do any other things. All I wanted to do is speaking up for those people, speaking up for my mom, so that one day my mom can have the life she deserves. I don't expect her to have a very rich or very wonderful life. All I want is for her to stay at her homes, to have a proper, nutritious meal, to not be hungry, to not suffer in cold, to have a good sleep. This is all I want. Uyghur people are not only suffering from the human rights abuse, they are suffering from the genocide. Some people said genocide is a too strong word. We cannot say it's too strong. But right now, in my perspective, in a daughter perspective, this is a genocide. Millions of people were having a horrible life like that, locking up in the concentration camp, living a life not the human deserves. Like the animal are having a better life than the humans in the concentration camp. If we don't say this is a genocide, then what is it? What is it? The intellectuals, they spend all of their life being a good person, being a good citizen, contributing to the society, and then one day they were sentenced to 10 years, 20 years life sentence. If this is not a genocide, what is this? The Uyghur young people, they cannot choose the life they want. They were transferred to the factories to supply major global brands with the minimum wage, sometimes with no wage. And they have to work in the factories like a slave all day. If this is not a genocide, then what is this? The graveyards, the mosques that the Uyghur women value were being destroyed. We are forced to live in a Han Chinese style life. We are forced to abandon our cultures. If this is not a genocide, then what is this? So this is a genocide. This is a genocide, and if people and if governments, if international community don't work together to prevent that, we will perish. So I hope I hope the people all around the world can hear our story, can actually do some research on how to help Uyghurs, and during this Chai event, all other speakers will also talk about how to help preventing the Uyghur genocide. Please, if any actions you can actually manage to do, please do. Please save a nation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, AKIDA, for letting us meet your mom and getting to know her and her strength and your family. And just taking a deep breath. Invite everyone to take a deep breath, to take in these stories, to honor their lives. And maybe all have the grace, the strength, the resources to take the action that we're called to take. Thank you. Next up, I'd like to introduce Roshan to you, Roshan Abbas. Roshan is the founder and executive director of Campaign for Uyghurs. She has been an ardent campaigner for the human rights of the Uyghur people and has worked closely with members of the Congress since 1990s. Roshan's sister, Dr. Gulshan Abbas, and their aunt disappeared in September 2018. It was recently discovered that Gulshan was sentenced to 20 years in prison by the Chinese Communist Party, quote unquote, terrorism. Her disappearance came shortly after Roshan spoke on a panel at the Hudson Institute in DC about the network of internment camps in Xinjiang. Sorry about that. Please, Roshan, I'm eager to hear what you have to share. And thank you to everyone for commenting in the comments and sharing your thoughts with the speakers and the rest of us.
Thank you, Tasneem. Thank you so much for giving us the chance to speak about what's happening to our people. I am an Uyghur American, and I'm a mother. I'm a professional, and I'm a sister to someone who's detained by the Chinese regime, although she's innocent. Her life is of value, as are millions of others who are being brutally targeted for genocide by the Chinese Communist Party. Since Communist China's occupation of our homeland in 1949, the CCP has been relentlessly destroying the Uyghur culture and religion, and our ethnic identity. Our people have been persecuted under the label of nationalists, counter-revolutionaries, and separatists. In the aftermath of the 9/11 tragedy in the United States, the CCP used the war on terrorism as a pretext by rebranding their effort for this genocide. Those Uyghurs who are being captives in the concentration camps are professors, writers, doctors, philanthropists, successful business people. They are mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters. They are very special people, just like my sister Gulshan Abbas, who are being enslaved today for the short-term economic benefits of some big corporates. So my own sister's story reflects the truth of millions today. These brutalities have led to what is now active genocide, largely due to the geopolitical significance of East Turkestan for Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Initiative. I watched my husband's entire family disappear into the camps. When I spoke about it, my own sister and my aunt was abducted. My aunt was released several months later, but I have no word from my sister since September 2018. We learned on Christmas Day last year that she received a very harsh prison sentence on false charges on March of 2019. Chinese state media was still accusing me of making up my sister's story as of December 2019, 6 months after they sentenced her, and they were accusing me for spreading rumors about my missing sister. Her daughters are now raising her grandchildren without their grandma and have difficulty living normal lives as they are tormented with worry. The Chinese regime is currently waging a war on religion, free thought, culture, and the Uyghurs' ethnicity while conducting this active genocide, while the entire world is mute as China buys the compliance of the business world, mainstream media, the United Nations, the NBA, the Hollywood, and the famous celebrities who are mostly very vocal against any sort of social injustice. Hollywood allows itself to be run by the Chinese money. It's not just about the Uyghurs and defending the Uyghurs' future anymore. It's about defending the future of the democracy and the free world. The tragedy of the Uyghur people will be the future of this entire world if this threat is not addressed. Those more than 3 million Uyghurs are in concentration camps, complete with attached crematoria, while companies like Volkswagen, Siemens, and many more profit off of the slave labor of millions more who are enslaved in those factories across China. The world continues to buy the narrative of the oppressor while the Chinese regime seeks to distract and divide the international community. I would like to take you through a closer look at the atrocities which Tunisia and AKIDA just talked about. So look at the picture of these men. What does that remind you of? The world witnessed during the Holocaust. The Uyghurs live in East Turkestan, which the land was prominent center of commerce for more than 2,000 years, and it gave birth to many civilizations at the various points of the history. When Manchus invaded our homeland in 1876, they renamed it Xinjiang, which means new territory. In 1884, Our people staged numerous uprisings against the Chinese ruler, and twice in 33 and 44 succeeded in setting up independent East Turkestan Republic. But in October 1949, the Chinese Communist Party occupied our homeland. That's the map, called it Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, which is in the heart of Central Asia. The population, according to Chinese consensus, is 12 million. But the Uyghur consensus shows over 20 million. And the size-wise, it's about 4 times of California and 1/6 of entire China. So our homeland is rich in natural resources. China's 1/3 of natural gas and oil reserves and 40% of coal reserves are located in our homeland. And also high concentration of fossil fuel and the precious metals and minerals such as uranium, gold, jade, and also produces 84% of China's cotton. And this is how it looks. Checkpoints on every corner. And it reminds you like a war zone. So basically, China's new Silk Road is the main reason for this police state. Racism and the cutting edge of technologies are being used to control the entire nation. And if you are familiar with George Orwell's 1984, that's exactly what's happening. And also Chinese state media shows over 500,000 Uyghur children placed in state-run orphanages. And those are some of the pictures of those overcrowded rooms and the Uyghurs who are the thought leaders are put in camps like that, facing mental and physical torture. Those are the few kind of things can get you in to those concentration camps. As little as having a WhatsApp on your phone, or going to mosque praying, fasting, or performing a traditional wedding or funeral, traveling to Muslim majority countries, or speaking in your native language in the schools or other places. Also, Chinese government tried to portray those concentration camps as vocational training centers and re-education centers. That's how they look like. Double barbed wires, armed guards, and the crematorias are attached to a cult that doesn't practice cremation. According to one of the AP reporter gone through hundreds of documents in Chinese, and they located one purchase order, just one for one concentration camps. Almost 3,000 police beatings, over 500 electric cattle prods, and over 1,300 pairs of handcuffs. Imagine, these are the kind of equipments they are using at the re-education centers. So what kind of schools are they? So those are the brave Uyghur witnesses. They were lucky to be able to release alive and be able to leave East Turkestan, because either they hold other countries' passports or they marry to citizens of other countries. So according to those witnesses, victims in the concentration camps, they are subject to intense indoctrination, and that they are subject to forsaking their ethnic identity, their religion, and subject to mental and physical torture, and a systematic mass rape, as recently reported in BBC and the CNN. And also they are being used as guinea pigs, testing unknown medications. Yeah, that's Tursunai, and that's heartbreaking BBC report. I couldn't sleep for 2 nights after I read that report. Last summer, actually, Adrian Zens compiled Chinese government's own data on the Uyghur population and birth rates, and it showed how it just plummeted in recent years because of the mass sterilizations and the forced abortions. In Kashgar, there's an airport sign, actually, special line dedicated for human organ transport passengers. Imagine that. Those airports actually doesn't even have a handicapped, special lane for special needed people in the wheelchair. Yet, they have a special dedicated lane for forced organ harvesting. These pictures are the same location before and after. Imagine a place like Times Square in New York City. All of a sudden, if it becomes ghost town, don't you wonder what happened to those people? The picture on the left is just a few years ago, before all these concentration camps started. 6, 7 years ago, probably, this normal, somewhat normal look on the left. People come after sunrise and stay there, cooking, eating, trading, visiting, and doing all kinds of businesses, and then go home after dark. The one on the right, bright daylight, you don't see many people there. The Uyghur girls are forced to marry Han Chinese with government ratifications. Government is offering housing, job, and the money for Chinese, Han Chinese men to marry to those Uyghur girls. If they refuse, then they go to concentration camps because they refuse to marry non-Muslim Han Chinese. If the girl cannot choose who she wants to marry, what do you call that? I would call that's government-sponsored mass rape of the Uyghur women under the sham of marriages. Look at those girls' faces. They look like they're attending funeral, not wedding. And what they call it, illegal Islamic activities and the illegal Islamic clothing, it can be just something a little bit longer shirts. And the girls are humiliated on the street, cutting their shirts off. Chinese government media reported 1.1 million Han Chinese cadres moved into Uyghur homes under the Double Relatives program to monitor and supervise the Uyghurs' daily lives. Most husbands are taken to the concentration camps or sent to prisons. Those Uyghur women are subject to sexual abuse. I'm going to play this video. There's a 1 man videotaping and 3 men on the bed with this woman who has a baby in her arm. So imagine what happens to that Uyghur woman that night. Those are the Uyghur children look like now. Basically human re-engineering, giving the Uyghur children new Han identity. And those clothes, traditional Han Chinese clothes, even the Chinese kids, they don't wear those, but they're forcing the Uyghur kids to wear. And look at that, the picture on the bottom right. That is one of the government-run orphanages. They call it kindergarten or kindercare for the kids. But look at the double barbed wires and the police with armed police standing in front of it. These kids are not allowed to go out. The parents are not allowed to come and visit them. So they are basically in the prison. And this is how the Uyghur children look like before. Look at their faces. They're normal, happy children. And look at them now. So as I mentioned earlier, all this happening because of Chinese New Silk Road, they call it, Belt and Road Initiative, or the 21st Century Marshall Plan, or the blueprint for Xi Jinping for the world domination. That puts our homeland, East Turkestan, as an epicenter of this plan. All four legs go through our homeland, as East Turkestan is a gateway to Central Asia, to Turkey, to Middle East, to Africa. So Belt and Road Initiative includes over 700 projects, $4 to $8 trillion investment. That basically covers 3/4 of the world. Infrastructure, airports, highways, railways, bridges. Basically, China is using the Belt and Road Initiative to debt trap and taking over countries. Basically, China's grand strategic plan for the colonization of the world. If you look at it, other than North America, basically almost all the countries are in it. So December 9th, 2019, Şöhret Zakir announces all of a sudden and said, Uyghurs graduated. They're all free after graduating. But I'm missing my sister. AKIDA is missing her mother. Bahram is missing his father. And many, many, many of the Uyghurs in diaspora, they're all still missing their relatives. So where did they graduate to? We started a hashtag, still no info, Bahram and the others introduced. So we were writing and tweeting and posting our families, our loved ones' pictures, asking, where's my sister, where's my mother, where's my father? And questioning the Chinese government, where the Uyghurs graduated to. And that's when they released this. There was I'm missing my dates here, but December 23rd, I believe, of 2019. The China Global Times, Chinese government's mouthpiece, named me and our organization Campaign for Uyghurs on the second paragraph here. For example, Rushan Abbas, leader of so-called Campaign for Uyghurs, and Khalmurat Hari. It says they first stole some Uyghurs' photos and the information, claimed those people to be missing relatives in Xinjiang, spread rumors. And then this guy, Li Jiaozhuan, who is the one of the high-level officials in the Chinese Foreign Ministry, he tweets attacking me, tried to discredit me with my picture, labeling me for CIA asset, and they basically saying that I was lying. And as you see, as I mentioned earlier when I give my remarks, that was December 2019. December 31st, 2020, again, the Foreign Ministry spokesperson announced to the world that they sentenced my sister, and which we heard that she was sentenced in March 2019, 6 months before that they accused me of lying. They already sentenced her. But to today, we still have absolutely no information on my sister's whereabouts. We don't know where she is. We don't even know if she's still alive. I sure hope so. but we have absolutely no information on her situation or condition of her health. Shortly after China claimed that the Uyghurs graduated, Australian Strategic Policy Institute released a report in the name of Uyghurs for sale. Yes, you read that correctly. In the 21st century, China brought back the slavery and the selling the Uyghurs, basically. 83 globally renowned companies have Uyghur slave labor in their supply chains. When they reported, they had more than 80,000 Uyghur workers were transferred out of East Turkestan to China proper. And the Xinjiang Production Construction Corp, they call it XPCC, we call it Bingpan. They are acting like a temp agencies, negotiating the sales of the Uyghur slaves, basically, making profit of Uyghur slaves. Those are the names. Most of the names you recognize. Most of the names, brands that we like, we use, they're all using Uyghur slave laborers. And very disappointingly today, actually some of them are openly lobbying, spending money on the lobbying firms to lobby against one of the legislature that introduced by the US politicians, Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. So my question to those companies, are you complicit in China turning a doctor into a textile worker, as a forced laborer, working as a slave in your factory? Even when the pandemic started, because of China's disinformation and the punishing the whistleblowers and lying to the world and making epidemic from Wuhan a global pandemic today, causing more than 500,000 American lives, claiming more than 500,000 deaths. They didn't spare the Uyghurs. Not only using the Uyghurs as guinea pigs for the vaccines, they also sent Uyghurs to China proper, and then making them produce facial masks and the PPEs. So January this year, the US State Department designated China's actions as genocide. And the also Canadian House of Commons passed a motion recognizing it is genocide. And just a couple of days ago, Dutch House of Representatives recognizes Uyghur genocide. So there are about 3 countries now agreeing with us. So we have been saying it is genocide for the past 2-3 years. Finally, the world starting to wake up. So the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act is being reintroduced. And also the United Kingdom has made a similar announcements, and Australia also currently contemplating a customs law that would ban all the imports made with forced labor, especially the Uyghur slaves. When all this happening, all these atrocities and crimes against humanity, China is hosting the Olympic Games, reminding the history, like in front of us, history is repeating itself. Like in the Berlin 1938, Berlin 1936, Hitler announcing to the world the opening of the Olympic Games. Are we going to allow Xi Jinping announcing to the world the opening of the Beijing Winter Olympics while conducting genocide? So the Canadian Parliament just adopted a motion that will call for and they discussed the relocation of the Olympic Games. And also today, similar resolution was introduced in the US House by Representative Walz and Representative Restrepo. So we want to see the Olympic, hosting the Olympic rights, stripping off Beijing from hosting the Olympic. And if that's not going to happen, then we need to call for diplomatic boycott of the Olympic Games. We cannot reward a genocidal regime with Olympic Games. So what can you do to help? I'm going to put these back after I finish up my other remarks. So basically, what you have witnessed are the reality which is happening in the 21st century on your watch. What's happening in our homeland currently is not just an Uyghur issue, or it's not a Muslim issue, or an American issue, but it is a test for the soul and the conscience of humanity. I want to remind everyone, you do not have to be a Muslim, you do not have to be Uyghur, or you do not have to be even a professional activist to be an upstander. We need every single voice uniting together to say that we will defend the conscience of humanity from having never again repeat itself again. The path to becoming an advocate begins for all who are making a difference in ending this genocide by waking up to the realities happening in the world around us. In a sense, it's born out of necessity. We must be willing to emotionally invest ourselves while maintaining hope. We must also develop tools that will allow us to let others join us, or our activism will be largely inactive. So our recommendations for women are to never underestimate yourself or your ability. You have a unique ability to use your voice in ways others cannot. Your boldness is desperately needed, especially as the average person still has not heard of the Uyghurs or what's happening to them today. We all have our unique, our own unique platforms and abilities. We must seek out what they are and let our talents shine. We should avoid comparing ourselves to others. We must be committed in educating ourselves continually and in sharing what we learn with others at every step of our journey. So advocacy isn't always about taking on the cause that's popular. It's taking on the cause that's right. As such, as women, when we are leaders in our faith communities, with our children, or in advocacy, not all of our decisions are popular with everyone. We will encounter judgment, jealousy, attacks, insecurity by the others, and the obstacles. We must always keep the big picture of right and wrong in our mind. For example, what's happening to the Uyghurs is abhorrent, truly crimes against humanity, a genocide, but we see how other countries are cowed into silence, often for economic reasons. So when you take on advocacy, know that you won't always be admired for your efforts. And thus, it's essential to have character and confidence in what you are doing, and to let that sustain you, even though the hard times. Women are often the keepers and the disseminators of culture and information. That's why I'm so thankful for events like these that allow us to connect as women and to join our efforts and voices together. Educating and empowering a woman means empowering and educating an entire family and the entire community, which will be passed down from generation to generation. The greatest way to lift a community, empower the people, and become great advocates is to make sure that women have the tools necessary to do so. I want to thank you for considering how to be an effective leader. The world desperately needs the voices of women who can stand against the seemingly unbudgeable evils in the world. Thank you so much, and I look forward to having many of you to join us in this journey.
Thank you so much, Rashan. That was so powerful, and I'm sure we're all feeling the weight of what you shared and what AKIDA and Tunisia shared as well. And we just invite you all to thank Rashan and respond to her in the chat as well. And I love what you said, Rashan, about all of us coming together and carrying this weight together, no matter where we come from or what beliefs we have or don't have or which group we belong to. We can all come together and agree that what's happening is horrible and wrong and needs to end. And we're going to talk in a little bit about some action steps we can take to contribute to the end of this genocide. But first, we're going to go into a little bit of Q&A time. And I would love to introduce Julie Millsap to you all. Julie is the Director of Communications for the Campaign for Uyghurs, and she joined CFU after moving back to the US from China and began her involvement advocating for Uyghurs after witnessing the atrocities during her time living overseas. She's been passionate about human rights issues, politics, and history since her childhood and enjoys volunteering in her spare time. And I will hand it over to you, Julie.
Thanks so much, Becca, and thank you to everyone, every single one of you who is able to join us tonight. Before we move into our question and answer period, I did want to say thank you to each of our speakers who are sharing their stories and trauma and truth with us tonight. So thank you very much. During this time, we'd like to spend about 15 minutes giving everyone time to ask questions of our panelists. I did see some come in the chat. So you can either choose to use the raise hand function, or you can type your question into the chat and I'll direct it to the appropriate person to answer. I'm going to start off with some questions that we received during the presentation. And I did see that one of the ones that came in, which is a great question, is how can we help Uyghurs, especially women, to get out of Chinese territory to safety? What is the closest Muslim majority country? Are they accepting Uyghur refugees? That is a really great question. Rushan, do you want to speak a little on that?
Yeah. Unfortunately, many Muslim majority countries are becoming victims for China's disinformation and false narratives. Egypt, for example, sent Uyghurs back, Uyghur students who were studying at the Al-Azhar University. That is one of the major Islamic universities for Islamic education. In the history of Al-Azhar, in the history of Egypt, something like this never happened. But because the Chinese regime basically buying out compliance of those Muslim majority countries, and that's happening to Uyghur people. Many Uyghurs are also sent back from Central Asia. Of course, started from very early years, early times, even back in the 80s and the 90s with Pakistan. Pakistan is being neighboring country. They have been sending back Uyghurs to persecution. and the Uyghurs were just shot to kill right there at the border as they crossed to the other side. Turkey is being great. There are lots of refugees in Turkey, and so far they are living in Turkey, somewhat safe situation. But China's again using the vaccines. We hear that they are holding the vaccines and pressuring the Turkish government to sign the prison exchange bill or something. They want to push the Turkish parliament to pass so they can claim the Uyghurs, whoever they want to perpetrate, back to China. And that's not happening because a lot of opposition are refusing, and also the Turkish government. I don't think, I still pray to God, and I don't think that Turkey is going to do that. So it's extremely difficult, the refugee situation for Uyghur people. But the US is recently just going to introduce, or has been introduced today or yesterday. I didn't follow up with that news very closely, but there is going to be a special version on the refugee bill, and it's supposed to make it easy for Uyghurs to get political asylum in the United States. So getting passport is extremely difficult for Uyghurs. This is not just something now, but all these years. Even when I came to the United States back in 1989, just 10 years after China opened up to the diplomatic relationship with the United States and most of the Western countries, and they were really opening up the area. It took me more than a year to just get my passport when I graduated the university, coming to the United States. Therefore, the Uyghurs are minority, smallest groups in many of the Western democratic countries, like entire United States. We are probably less than 10,000. And in Canada, Australia, Europe, all these countries, just a few thousand to several thousand in each country. I hope I was able to answer that question, because it is a great question, but it's difficult to answer, to be honest with you.
That was great. I would also share too, there have been a few refugees that managed to make it to the US and have given very horrific testimony. So you will see them referenced in a lot of the CNN and BBC reporting. And if you're interested in refugee issues, you can definitely follow our organization, Campaign for Uyghurs. We are also involved with refugee work in Turkey, helping homeless Uyghur youth. Unfortunately, a lot of youth have maybe gone there to study and then been cut off from communicating with their families and potentially funds. And so they end up in very, very dangerous and dire situations, stranded in Turkey and cut off. And so there's been a huge problem with homelessness among the Uyghur youth, and leaves them quite vulnerable in society. So if that is something that you feel like you have a heart for, interested in advocating on, you can definitely get in touch with us. So thank you so much, Rushan. And we're going to put some contact information up here while I continue to take some questions. I did see a question come in Tunisia or AKIDA. Anyone who feels they would like to answer this can. And this is a lovely comment from Lindsay, who says she's been heartbroken for many years for her beautiful Uyghur friends. And thank you so much, Lindsay. Is asking, does anyone really know how many Uyghurs have died since 2017 in the concentration camps and forced labor factories? How do you all find out more information on your loved ones? How do we know if they're alive or dead, or what location that might be in? If anyone is comfortable answering that, you can chime in among our three speakers. Otherwise, I'm happy to help, but I'll allow the speakers to answer first.
As I can, I tried to answer this one. Yeah. And with the for me, For me, I came from Hotan region. It's very farthest the city, and the atrocity takes this place is very, very extreme way. And last more than 3 years, for me, I haven't been contact my family members. I have no idea. I have 3 brothers and their family. My parents, they passed away a few years ago. And my mother-in-law, father-in-law, my husband, he has 6 brothers, sisters. And both of us, we have no idea. Are they alive or not? Are they in their home or in the concentration camp? We call them, and we all of the phone number has been disappeared, and then few of the phone number we still have it, but no one pick up our phone. We have no idea, and then we always wake up and with anxiety and whether they are alive or not. And this kind of emotional is very, very hard to hold sometimes. And the about the number of the people dying from the concentration camp, all or forced labor camps, and because of the information for the Uyghurs, it's very hard for us to take from inside of East Turkestan. As you know, is the Chinese Communist Party is very, very censored about the news inside of the East Turkestan. They always spread propaganda and try to the covered up world's eye with CCP lies, and it's very hard for Uyghur to get the real number. Our Uyghur scholars just predict maybe more than millions people have died, and just our Roshan, she explained about the crematoria built beside the concentration camps. Chinese Communist Party tried to vanish all the evidence and built crematoria beside the concentration camps. As our religiously, we cannot accept this kind of procedure, and it's very hard to say is the concrete number at this time.
Thank you so much, Janisa, for answering that. I'd like to direct a question to AKIDA now. That's come in, and this question is saying, with Uyghurs who live in China but maybe are not in the camps, do you think it's more effective for them to help if they stay in China or if they're working outside of the country?
I would like to take on these questions, and from my own experiences and from what I know is it is such difficult and such risky for Uyghurs living in China to help Uyghurs living in the camps, because like what I can describe is every Uyghurs living in China, they have a knife above their heads, and this knife will fall like into fall onto their heads any times. Like everybody are like dancing around the dancing about the knife, like thinking, like praying for themselves to not in the camps. So if they, so that's why like the my homeland is like an open prison. Even people are not living in the camp, they are being so cautious in their daily life. They cannot say anything against the will of the communist parties. They cannot, they don't want to do anything risky, like anything like or having a Quran at their homes or arguing with the Chinese officials or do anything that might put them into the camps. For examples, like I my other family members, they are not like that are not in the camps. When I communicate, like my direct family member, like my grandparents, my fathers, when I communicated with them and asked them about the where is my mother's, they cannot provide me with any questions. And if and they every time when I have to talk to them, they have to say something like, you need to love your country, you need to love China, you cannot do anything harmful to China, you have to, communist party is treating us well. they say this kind of things deliberately, just to make sure that just to be safe, because if they say something's risky, or if they try to help the people in the camp, they will end up in the camps too. And for my other distant relatives, like my auntie, my uncle in China, they already deleted me in the WeChat. So the situation, it's not their fault, but the situation in theirs, the Chinese Communist Party already threatened them, scared them so hard. Like it's like it's like mafia governments, it's like the mafia government, like people are all like living in scares, cannot do anything, like cannot do anything, cannot be like cannot do anything to put themselves in risk. So people are living in an abnormal situation like that in China. So come to my main point is, this is ours rules. This is the people, all of the Uyghur abroad, all of the, not only the Uyghurs, all of the people, human beings abroad, outside of the China, to help those people's suffering in China. It's because they cannot help themselves. They don't have that ability. They don't have that power. They need our help to speak up. So that's why I become an activist today.
Thank you so much, AKIDA. Great answer. I hope that provides some insight for everyone. I did see we have only about 1 minute left, and we had several questions come in. So I'm going to try to speed through these and direct you to some things that may be able to help you dig in more as we're coming to the end of our question time. But I did see a question about refugees, law firms, NGOs working on refugee status. If you're interested in that, please email us and I can direct you to people working on those issues. But I will say we'll talk about this more in a few minutes, but contacting your representatives on that particular issue is very important right now as well. So we can definitely help direct you some resources about that. I see this question about similar evils being perpetrated toward other Muslim groups in China. Yes, we do see these tactics being replicated, and beginning with how things kind of were initially with the Uyghurs is now being repeated with Hui Muslims. Kazakhs have been in the camps right alongside them. And while Uyghurs are facing the most brutality, the Communist Party is starting to repeat a lot of these things that they've successfully been getting away with the Uyghurs, with Tibetans, Southern Mongolians, other people groups in China. And so as Rushan shared, this is not just about the Uyghurs, but it will be the future for many if we do not intervene. Final question that I'll direct to some resource to is good ways for foreigners or Han Chinese living in China to help. I can probably talk quite a bit about that, but I'll summarize by saying very carefully. But it is good to try to initiate conversations with Han Chinese, especially. And if you're interested in kind of specifically pointers on how to do that, you can email us, and we're very happy to direct you to some resources in Chinese, as well as give some suggestions about wise ways to do that. We're coming on the end of our question time, and I wish we could spend even longer on that. But as I mentioned, you will have ample opportunity to get in touch with us and continue to continue the conversation, we hope. We'd like to do something a little bit different right now, which is when we have these events, these virtual CHAI events, this is a really different kind of event for us and really special, because this gives us this intimate time as women to connect with one another, to hear beyond a news headline that we may be able to see a number and become overwhelmed with, to really hear their personal stories and hear from the heart of Uyghur women themselves. And so it's such a valuable opportunity for us to interface. And we like to have memories of this time. So we'd like to invite everybody to take a little group photo. This is not the end of the time. We're going to have an activity after this, but we're going to do a little screenshot group photo. If you are uncomfortable being on camera, please turn off your video, and it won't be captured. But if you are comfortable, I'd like for us to do that together. So I'm going to give everybody a couple seconds to turn off the camera if you're not wanting to be part of that. Otherwise, we'll count, and everybody can smile into your webcam, and we'll have a nice little memory of our time together that we'll send out later. So if everybody's ready, on 1, 2, 3. Okay, Looking lovely. I'm going to do a couple more just to make sure that we get everybody. Okay. Sorry, my camera's a little slow today. Okay. Wonderful. All right. And we can do one more. Ready? 1, 2, 3. All right. Wonderful. And we will be sharing those later on. So if you'd also like to have this memory, you'll be able to have that later. All right. So we'd like to now transition into another little activity, which is we're going to be sharing some action steps. So I'd like to share my screen again. And while I'm doing that also, I'm going to share a survey in the chat. This is a quick little survey that you can do to help us know how we might help you after the event with equipping and getting some feedback on particular areas that we might improve and also empower you, hopefully. So I'm going to stick that in the chat right now. You can do that while we look at these slides that I'm going to share on the screen. And okay. Great. So we'd like to talk a little bit about some action steps and some very specific things that we can do to take action. So as we've heard these stories, and I hope that all of you will consider the personal role that we do have to play in being a sister to the women that we heard on the call today and really helping to become involved in stopping these atrocities. So a few specific suggestions that we have and things that we'd like to ask from those in attendance today. So the first is to help us spread awareness. So after the event, as I mentioned, we have our lovely group photo. If you can share that group photo on social media, letting people know that you participated in this event and maybe something that you learned from it to help us raise awareness of these issues, of these women and their stories, that will be fantastic. In a moment, I will also be sharing a link to a Facebook group. This is a private group. It is only for people that have attended our virtual CHAI events. And this is called the Uyghur Advocacy Network. So this is a Facebook group for us to keep in contact. We'll be sharing periodically ways that you can be involved, action steps, even little daily things that you can do that are quick and straightforward and have very specific directions about ways that we can raise our voice and leverage our networks and skills so that we can see justice and freedom for the Uyghurs. And you can also stay updated in there on our future actions and events. We'd also like to invite everyone who is on the call today to join our Uyghur Advocacy Workshop. So this is going to be different than the event we're doing tonight. And this is going to be next Friday, so 1 week from today, the same time. And this is going to be Uyghur Advocacy 101. So we're going to be learning about mass boycotts of Chinese products, how to do that effectively, how to really participate in something like that, and how we go about ending Uyghur slave labor, how we can create that financial pressure for change. We'll also specifically be learning how to contact your government representatives to advocate for policy change. So whether you're experienced in doing that or not, this is going to have very clear, easy to follow guidelines and empowerment on how to do that effectively, how to communicate on these issues, and what issues specifically are really priority. And then if this is something that has been meaningful to you and you would like to bring people alongside of you, which I always encourage, is as you're being educated and learning about these issues, please educate others. Please bring other people alongside you for this journey and mobilize your own network. If you're interested in hosting your own virtual storytelling event, that is something you can also speak with us about, and we're very, very happy to arrange and excited to do that. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. I'm going to go ahead and put the link to our little Facebook group in the chat, which is the Uyghur Advocacy Network. So you can request to join that. That will also have a link in the group to how to register for that advocacy training, or I see that Becca also put that in the chat, and you can stay in touch there about future events. I'm sure this won't be the only one, although I can't say for sure we don't have another one scheduled yet, but if you're not able to attend this first event, you'll definitely want to stay in there so that you can see updates. And so now what I'd like to do is I'm going to turn it back over to Tasneem for a very, very special activity.
Thank you to everyone. Heart is definitely full. Mind is buzzing with questions and thoughts, and lots of love to everybody. To just share, to wrap us up before we go back to our lives, would love to hear from you all, something you appreciated from tonight. It could be something you heard from the speaker, perhaps a, memorable question that raised something even more for you. So if you want to take a moment to just enter in the chat something you appreciated from tonight, or if you're comfortable, you can also just raise your hand, and I believe you'll be able to say it out loud verbally to us as well. So, I'm seeing a lot of wonderful faces. I'm assuming we're all in different parts of the country, who knows, even the world, different time zones. And this is an opportunity for us to all come together and stand in solidarity with our Uyghur sisters and do something. So anything you appreciated from tonight? Thank you. Yes, I'm also grateful for Rashan, AKIDA, and Tunisa for being so vulnerable, so brave. Thank you for sharing. Being a voice for the voiceless, indeed. Yes, that in itself, sometimes a burden, but often a privilege in itself. So grateful for the vulnerability of our storytellers. Thank you, Taylor, and the strong women. So inspired, yes. Thank you, Julie, for the increasing awareness on this now. Something that AKIDA had said was the role of chai in her culture and her mom's life. That really stood out to me. You know, it's something so simple and still so profound. And yes, it is a right. It is so needed. Thank you so much, Lauren, Trini. Vulnerability, oops, now it's running. Intense personal trauma, but your incredible bravery in speaking out is beautiful. Yes, thank you, Emily. Thankful to everyone. Yes, thank you. Lindsay, Haley, Anna, Catherine, thank you. And yes, to the calls of action. So let's get on to that Facebook group so we can continue to take action every day or every week. Let's get into that advocacy group so we can learn more and be in a better positions to actually speak more prominently and confidently. So let's take that action. Awesome. Thank you, Anne, for sharing your gratitude for the stories. Yes, me too. I admire these women for speaking up through intense pain and the sake of countless others. Yes, thank you, Catherine and Mindy, for sharing their stories they're saying. No small thing indeed. No small thing indeed. Thank you. Yes. So I'm going impromptu over here, just being led, and would just love to also, as we continue to share appreciations, hold space for one another. Sometimes silence is powerful, whether you pray, whether you want to just hold space, energy, whatever you believe in or works for you. Let's just take a moment to just send a lot of love and a lot of good vibrations and energies and prayers to all the Uyghur families, both in the camps, in China, in the region, in America, and other parts of the countries and the world. sending love, prayers for peace, for justice. May their hearts be nourished. May they feel held. May they be comforted. And may they be safe and enjoy many countless chai moments and basics of life and much, much more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tasneem. That's such a beautiful, wonderful way to close our time together this evening. I just want to thank everyone once again for taking this time to sit with us, to have our virtual chai, to really walk with other women in these very hard and painful experiences in life, and to come alongside them and to commit to being part of ending this pain. Thank you so much to Peace Catalyst International, to Becca, Nicole, Tasneem, for being part of putting this on this evening. And thank you so much to Turnisa, AKIDA, and Rushan, as has been echoed through the chat and these comments, for being brave enough, vulnerable enough, transparent enough to share with us their stories and truth about what is happening, even though it's painful. So we look forward to staying in touch with everyone who was on the call this evening. And thank you so much. I hope each of you have a wonderful evening, and we look forward to speaking more in the future.
Thank you.